first time she sees him, she's too young to remember. He, on the other hand, will remember every detail. "She is small," he says. "She is Imikari," the Tamasaran answers. "Of course she's small." She grasps his finger when he reaches out to touch her arm. A reflex, he knows. The knowing does not change the way it makes his heart lurch behind his ribs. "You really should not have come," the Tamasaran says. "It is not wise." The Aragena said. "I know what she said," the Tamasaran interjects. "She is soft in these things. Soft on you." He does not answer. The Tamasaran clucks her tongue, chiding, but he knows it's only rumor that fuels her disapproval. It is the role of a Tamasaran to listen and to speak, which often gives way to gossip. Asit Taleb. He eyes her. He does not recognize this Tamasaran. "You are not the one who bore her," he says. "You would remember if I was the one who laid with you, Karashok," she answers, smirking and sly. He schools his face to hide his reaction. "And she certainly would not have come about if you had." Ah, Karashok thinks. This one is Akunathlok. He is always the last to notice these things. "Do you know her dam?" "I know 15 generations of her dams and sires," she says, "and you will not." "I have no intention of going to find her if that is what worries you," Karashok answers, frowning. "I just want to know if she is well." The Tamasaran clucks her tongue again, still disapproving, but, and perhaps he is imagining it, with a softer edge. "She is well," she answers, eventually, "and you are too sentimental about these things." Karashok knows that she is right. He stares down at the little Imikari, and he feels. Deeply, profoundly. He cannot help himself. He sees everything in her that is in him. The bright white hair, so like his own, the shape of her chin, the color of her eyes. He sees the nubs on her head where her horns will grow in, and wonders if they will have the gentle arc, like, "She is not yours," the Tamasaran says. "She only exists because of me," he protests. "And because of the Tamasaran who bore her," she says, "and the matriarchy who arranged the match, and the Aragena who oversaw the process, and Ashkari Koslun who showed us how best to make her. She belongs to all of us, Karashok. Asit Taleb." He purses his lips. He places one hand on her belly. She laughs and kicks her legs. Karashok feels like he might melt. "I just wanted to see her," he says, weakly, knowing that this reason is not good enough. The Tamasaran is right, of course. She belongs to the Kyun, not to him. He who takes more than what is his has taken from another. This is not the way of things. His thumping heart does not agree. He swallows down ideas for which he does not have the words. It is enough to have seen her, he tells himself. It must be. "Now you've seen her," the Tamasaran says, "and now you should go. And you should not come back." He comes back, of course. This time, she will remember, though only a little, and only as an indistinct blur of childhood memory. She will remember that he is tall, and that he does not have horns. She will remember that he was arguing with Tama when she came out into the large entryway full of chairs and toys. She will remember that when he saw her, he stopped talking and stared. "Imikari," Tama says, rushing toward her. "What happened to your hand?"
"I touched the cooking pot, Tama."
Tama looks beleaguered. "Why did you do that?"
"I wanted to know what hot feels like. It feels bad."
She beams at Tama, proud of what she has learned. Tama does not share the sentiment. She picks her up and balances her on one hip. "Koslun says that struggle is an illusion. This is, I think, proof positive that he never cared for a toddler." "Is that—" Tama turns, letting her get a good look at the stranger. She knows by his sword and his vitar that he is with the Antom, though not much besides.
"Where did your horns go?"
she asks him at once. "Imikari," Thomas says, with that very particular voice that means she has done something bad. But he does not look as angry as Tama. He grins at her, leans forward, wiggles his fingers in her face. "They were broken off in battle with the great Atashi," he says, and she gasps.
"You fought a dragon? Did you touch it? Was it hot? I know what hot feels like."
Tama continues not to be impressed, but the stranger chuckles. It's a low rumble in his chest. She likes the sound it makes, she thinks. She will remember the sound of it, or at least that she liked it. Such wisdom, he says. You'll be Arakyun one day, I'm sure.
Does Arakyun get to touch many things?
Enough, Tama says, turning her body so that she has to crane her neck to look at him. You should not have come here, Karashok. I am Karasad now, he corrects. Tama's expression is pinched. Congratulations on the promotion, she says. Now leave. I just wanted to see her, he says. Please, Tamasaran, it's been years. I just want to know if she's happy, if she's safe. Of course she's safe. She's my charge, Tama says. And as for happy...
Cooking pots are very hot,
she interjects. Tama sighs heavily. Make of that what you will. What role do you think she will fill? The stranger, Karasad, asks. Will she be Tamasaran, like you? Will she go into the priesthood, the field? She's 4 years old, Karasad. It will be many years before this lump of clay becomes a brick. But surely you have an inkling. She's so curious. A scholar, maybe. I cannot discuss these things with you. I just want to know where to find her when she's grown, Tama barks. What will that accomplish? What do you hope to gain from this endeavor, Karasad? The stranger, Karasad, hesitates and has no answer. He looks desperately from Tama to her, as if hoping to find some answer on her small face.
Tama, what's wrong?
She asks, and tugs on a lock of hair that had fallen loose from her bun.
Why are you angry?
As ever, she cannot resist investigating things that are dangerous. But the Tamasaran is patient. She takes a breath and pats her white hair. I'm not angry, Imikari, she says. I'm just disappointed. She shoots Karasad an icy look. There are few enough Kunari who don't fear the wrath of a Tamasaran, and Karasad looks appropriately cowed. Go, Tama tells him. And if you know what's good for you, don't come back. He comes back. The Tamasaran is so angry she nearly throws a chair at his head. And yet, on that cool spring morning 2 years later, he says 3 words that still her rage before she lets loose the breath she'd drawn to scream at him. I'm being deployed. It is, the Tamasaran thinks, like being a sail suddenly bereft of wind. She stares at him in quiet astonishment. The Yantam does not deploy needlessly. If he is leaving, it must be for very good reason. He must be all but assured of his own death. She releases her breath in a long sigh, mutters one of the cantos under her breath. Mirad Astarit, Mirad Itwasit, Aban Akyun, Maras Shokra. I know you're angry, he says. I just... Once more. Please, Tamasaran, before... I should take you straight to the Arashok and let him know about this, she says. There's no venom in her words. Koslun, fine, but keep it brief. It's nearly time to put them down, and I don't want her getting excited by stories about dragons, Karasad. He almost tells her that he is no longer Karasad, that he has been promoted again, but he does not want to press his luck. He smiles, or at least attempts something that approximates a smile, and follows her when she rises and heads into the playroom. The room is lit only by one large, roaring hearth dominating the northern wall. There are a half-dozen other children scattered around, some playing with building blocks, one playing with toy soldiers, one fast asleep on a pillow. His eye is drawn immediately to snowy white hair, to the little girl staring intently at a large picture book open on her lap. Brief, she reminds him, voice sharp but not unkind. He nods reverently, approaches. His face is controlled, but his thumping heart betrays him. He knows she is still so young, that she will likely not remember this. But he wants her to. He wants her to remember something of him. It is a selfish wish, he knows, a flaw of his character. Fine, then. He is flawed, Asit Taleb. Perhaps she inherited his weakness and will appreciate a memory of the man who sired her. He hopes she will. She looks up at him when he gets close enough, her eyes light with recognition.
Atashi,
she says, pointing at his head, or more specifically at his lack of horns. He smiles weakly. It would be good, he thinks, to be remembered by his daughter as Atashi. He kneels down next to her. Hello again, Imikari. She sets the book down and clambers to a stand. When he's crouched, she is just tall enough to reach up both hands and pat across his head, as if verifying there are truly no horns on his head. His heart twists painfully, but he commits every moment to memory. He will remember this. He will remember her. Daughter, his mind says. Kadan, his heart answers.
Did it hurt when your horns broke off?
She asks him. Oh yes, he says, and forces a smile. She nods, her face reflecting as much sage wisdom as a 6-year-old can muster.
That is how you learn not to do it again,
she says. He laughs loudly. She looks confused at first, and then pleased with herself. She does not understand why she has made him laugh, but is happy that she did. What a remarkable child, he thinks. How wonderful it is to have had any part in her creation.
Tama was very mad at you last time,
she says. She was, he agrees, and sits down on the rug in front of the fire with her.
Did you touch something you were not supposed to?
Not precisely, he answers, but you are close. Your Tama does not think I should talk to you.
Why? She
asks, predictably. He opens his mouth, shuts it. What words are there that could answer her question? How could he translate the complicated combination of rules made and rules broken into an explanation she could comprehend? He couldn't, he decides, so instead he reaches into his bag. I have a present for you, he says.
Wow!
She says before he's even pulled it out. She has likely never received one before. You must keep it safe for me while I am gone, he says, and hands it to her. Be careful with it. It is precious. The dragon tooth is perhaps as large as his hand, certainly larger than hers. She breathes in when she sees it.
Wow,
she says again, with more intensity. Then it seems to connect in her mind.
Atashi!
That's right, he says, and smiles at her. She may have taken my horns, but I took her tooth, so we're even. He winks and pinches her cheek. She laughs and wiggles away, but doesn't let go of the tooth. In fact, she's gripping it hard against her chest.
I like it very much,
she says.
Does it hurt to touch the pointy end?
Without waiting for an answer, she presses it to her palm. He had, of course, anticipated this. He remembers well the impulse that had her touching the cooking pot to see what hot felt like, and had blunted the sharp tip. She seems disappointed when it doesn't break her skin. She says.
Dragons must not be so tough after all.
I would like for you to hold on to it, he says. I'm not... Not what? Not coming back? Not going to see you again? He does not know how to talk to children in the way of a Tamasaran, gentle and soft, hiding ugly truths with pretty lies. He did not think he'd ever have to. She stares at him with eyes that are too big and too wise for a child so young. He swallows down a knot of emotion. Another flaw. Asit Taleb. Hold on to it, he says. Remember me, Imekari, if you can. Remember Sten, who gave it to you. She nods slowly. She does, in fact, hold on to it. For 2 long years she never parts with it, steals glances at it when she knows no one else is looking. She remembers the man who gave it to her, wonders if the story of his lack of horns is true. And then, one night, in her dreams, she starts a fire and burns down her bedroom. She does not see the tooth again. In the backwoods border town Elian once called home, mornings in autumn were stunning. He has vivid memories of looking out the window of his room and seeing the sunrise coming over the Frostback Mountains, setting the red-gold treetops on fire. He remembers being sure that there was never anything in the world more beautiful. And then he saw Valrayo in autumn, and was reminded for neither the first time nor the last that everything was prettier in the capital. Come back to bed, Bastien says behind him. I can't properly admire you while you are backlit by the window. Elian turns, grinning.
You know, you don't have to keep trying to seduce me,
he says, but obligingly comes walking back toward the bed.
We're already sleeping together.
Nonsense, Bastien answers at once, and once Elian is back in bed, throws an arm around his shoulders. He has a stack of papers on his lap that he is only half paying attention to. I never pass the opportunity to remark upon something lovely. Elian adores Bastien. He wouldn't say so out loud, at least not in those precise words, because he knows it's not his place. But he does. He can't help himself. Bastien has given him everything he ever wanted, and some things Elian hadn't even realized he needed. A formal education, a patronage, security, opportunity, a safe introduction to the game. He owes the man everything. Some days he wishes he weren't just a bard. Some days. My Lord Ghislaine, you've received— Oh! It's Bernice, one of Bastien's maids, who had clearly not been expecting to walk into this bedroom to find both her lord and his bard naked and still smelling of sex. Elian is for a moment too stunned to move. He'd never really been caught in this position before. As he's trying to decide how best to react, "Yes, my dear," Bastien replies, mild as a spring morning, not at all like a man who's wearing no more clothes than the maker gave to him when he came out of his mother. "Receive the what?" Bernice is red-faced and staring hard at the marble floor. "A summons from the Empress," she stammers, feet shuffling, hands wringing the paper clutched in both hands. "The Council of Heralds is convening an emergency meeting." Bastien sighs, sounding tired. "Let me guess," he says. "The Civil War?" "I would never deign to read my lord's letters," Bernice answers at once. "No? Then I suppose it is a good thing you're a maid and not a bard." Elian stifles a laugh. He curls his legs up a bit to maintain some semblance of modesty, mostly for Bernice's sake at this point, but stays recumbent on the bed while Bastien sets aside his letters and stands up. Then immediately collapses, taking down the bedside table next to him with a loud clatter. "My lord!" Bernice shrieks.
Bastien!
Elian says at nearly the same moment, vaulting off the bed into his side. I'm fine. Bastien is immediately insisting, though when Elian leans down to help him stand back up, he takes the outstretched hand only to collapse again. Elian only barely manages to catch him. "This is your fault," Bernice hisses at Elian. "You should not have exerted him."
My fault?
Elian returns, aghast.
Do you think I'm so talented in bed I can make a man forget how to walk?
"Enough the pair of you," Bastien barks. "I'm just dizzy, that's all. Elian, fetch me a robe for the maker's sake." Elian fetches Bastien's robe, and one for himself. With Bernice's help, they get him into the small armchair by the armoire, where Bastien takes a few deep breaths and shuts his eyes. "My lord," Bernice says, "let me fetch you some tea. Or I could run out and get a tonic. Perhaps Madame de Fer could recommend a healer from the circle." "Oh, do stop fussing, Bernice," Bastien hisses shortly. "If I need a healer, I'll ask for one." Bernice at once looks like she's on the verge of tears. She has always been overly fond of Bastien, and takes his criticisms too harshly. A look of regret briefly passes over Bastien's face. "I'm fine," he says more coolly, "and I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention this to my wife, especially not to Vivienne. Make her know she'll have a conniption." Bernice sniffles, still distraught to have upset him. "Go on, girl," Bastien continues, "and leave the letter." "Yes, my lord," she whimpers. She leaves the letter on the bedside table, once Elian sets it upright again, and shuffles out of the room. The door clicks shut behind her.
Bastien,
Elian begins. "I'm fine," Bastien interjects.
you lost control of your legs.
Elian says.
Twice! This could be serious. Worse, it could be poison. If this is part of the game.
"It is not part of the game," Bastien says. His voice is uncharacteristically grim. "I know precisely what this is."
You what?
He what?
He said he's dying.
3 weeks ago, Elian could not have named, even with a knife to his throat, a single reason he would ever willingly talk to Vivienne de Fer. The woman despises him, and has no compunctions in showing it, and it's the least Elian can do to return the favor. But there is one thing they have in common, despite how much it annoys her, and that is Bastien. They both love him, and he knows that if anyone in Thedas will be willing to move heaven and earth to help Bastien de Ghislaine, it would be Vivienne. And she's a mage, so perhaps moving heaven and earth is within her grasp. Not that it had been easy to get her to talk to him. She hadn't responded to his first 3 letters requesting her to come back to Orlais. She'd lately been gone more often than not, having recently secured a position with this new Inquisition, whatever that was, and only when Elian had used Bastien's signet ring to seal it had she finally bothered to read it and reply.
He said the same affliction killed his mother, and her mother, and nearly everyone in his matrilineal line. He called it la mort lente.
Vivienne sits back in her chair, clearly reeling from the news. Bernice refills Vivienne's teacup. My Lord Bastien is too good for this world, she sniffs. The fine china rattles in her trembling hands. I can hardly believe he's being taken from us so soon.
There's got to be something we can do.
Elian protests.
He seems resigned to his fate, but that doesn't mean we have to be. Vivienne, isn't there anyone in the circle who might know how to heal this? I know you're an alchemist, perhaps...
There's neither a spell nor potion that could cure la mort lente, you foolish boy, Vivienne hisses at him. Elian stops, startled by the ferocity in her words. Have you never heard of the disease? It's incurable. In truth, Elian hadn't heard of it. He assumed the name mort lente had been less a clinical term and more an overwrought Orlesian name for some other disease. It hadn't occurred to him that Bastien might actually be right, that he really was dying, and there truly was nothing to be done about it. The thought of it makes him sick to his stomach. The pastries Bernice had laid out for the pair of them suddenly look a lot less appetizing. It's a wasting disease, Vivienne snarls. It slowly destroys the mind's control over bodily functions. First control of large muscle groups, then fine motor skills, then one's ability to talk and blink and breathe. Vivienne covers her mouth with one hand and turns away. Elian has never seen her so emotional before. She'd always been the picture of self-possession. Seeing her borderline hysterical almost shreds Elian's already fraying nerves. Maker, he thinks. Is this really it? Is Bastien really going to die? After a few seconds of silence, Bernice bursts into tears and races off the veranda, the teapot shattering to pieces on the stone. Neither Elian nor Vivienne acknowledge her departure.
So...
Elian begins, faltering.
There's nothing, really nothing, to be done?
Vivienne doesn't answer. Her hand is still clasped over her mouth, eyes shut.
How long does he have?
A year at most, she answers, hoarse. And no, there's nothing to be done, unless we can somehow make him 20 years younger. She stops again, her eyes narrow. Elian stares at her. He's perplexed, but mostly he's just sad. He's still reckoning with the idea that Bastien is dying, really dying, and there's nothing he can do. I have to go back to Skyhold, Vivienne says suddenly, standing up so abruptly that the metal legs of her chair skid loudly across the stone.
Go!
Elian says at once.
What? Madame, Bastien is dying! Shouldn't you?
Do not presume what I should do, she snarls at him. She's always been taller than him, but while he's sitting and she's wearing 3-inch heels, she positively looms above him. He feels silly and small and young, more so than he usually does whenever he's around her. You are his bard, but I am his mistress. How quickly you forget. Elian watches her leave the room, teeth grit. Of course she'd run off, back to the Inquisition, while Bastien wastes away. Maker forbid she show any semblance of empathy, even as her lover dies.
Fine,
Elian hisses, mostly to himself. If she's not going to be there for Bastien, someone has to be. It's one thing to say it, and another thing to do it, of course. He can want to be with Bastien as much as possible, knows it is the good and correct thing, but doing it hurts. Watching him stumble when he walks, watching his hands shake when he tries to drink his tea, watching him spend more and more time asleep. Even worse, Elian has to watch him write his own will. Elian wants nothing more than to keep Bastien distracted, to spend every morning in the garden and every night in bed, to give him as much joy as he possibly can in these last few months. But Bastien keeps asking him these horrible questions. Where do you want to live once I'm gone, Elian? Would you be amenable to being in another nobleman's service once I'm dead, Elian? Do you want to be set up with a part of my estate after I pass, Elian? What is he supposed to say? It tears him up to even think of an answer. But Bastien keeps asking, keeps getting his affairs in order, keeps having longer and more thoughtful conversations about death and the Maker. Vivienne is not present for any of it, which makes Elian nearly as angry as he is sad. You're very serious these days, little lark. Elian looks up across the dining room table. Bastien is still feeding himself, barely, but Bernice is standing at the ready to help wipe any spillage away from his chin. Elian hates to watch his hands shake.
So are you, Bastien.
He chuckles, wheezing. Yes, he says, but I'm the only one between us who's dying. Elian flinches, stares down hard at his meal. I know you are unhappy, Bastien says. I only hope it is because you'll miss me, and not because you're cross. He looks back up at once, heart lurching.
No, of course not,
he says.
I'm not cross, Bastien.
It's all right, Bastien assures him gently. Situations reversed, I suspect I'd be much the same. I remember watching my own mother while she... A tense, painful silence lapses between them. Bernice sniffles. Why don't we go to see an opera tomorrow night? Bastien asks. I think it would do me good to get out of the house.
I have a bit of studying to do,
Elian says.
But I can clear up an evening.
Bastien smiles, looking tired. Elian smiles back. If he'd known, it would be the last conversation he'd ever have with Bastien. Elian might have said something more profound. Perhaps some of the words that had been caught in his throat for so many years. I love you, Bastien. I have loved you for a long time. But these things are not always fair. Theatricality and showmanship are the way of Orlais, but death operates by its own rules. People who were tremendous and important in your life will sometimes die quietly, miserably, when you aren't even present, without even giving you a chance to say goodbye. Bastien leaves Elian's life as inauspiciously as he entered it, and it is not fair, and Elian is not all right, and nothing will ever be the same again. Take it from me, Lethalon, Fenarel says. Lying with a mage will be the best experience of your life. Yariel of Sabre clan is 20 years old, and is almost certain that Fenarel is full of shit. He claims that he slept with the second of Naran clan, but Yariel has seen Naran clan's second. She is tall and dark-skinned and way too beautiful to give a dope like Fenarel a second glance. This is all besides the point, of course. They're wild in bed, Fenarel insists. He's at Yariel's elbow, chirping as incessantly and obnoxiously as a bird. Their magic reacts when they... you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yariel answers, making sure not to sound impressed, because he isn't. He is not the least bit impressed with Fenarel's bullshit. Lavellan clan's first, on the other hand. That's how you know you're doing a good job. Get them to spray frost everywhere. It's day 4 of the Arlithven. Every clan in Thedas has gathered on the outskirts of Vershel, setting up tents and aravels and vendor stalls and great towering canopies to cover the feasting areas. It's a riot of sights and sounds and smells, roasting meat, lowing challah, lanterns enchanted to burn different colors, singing, thudding drums. The last time Yariel came to the Arlithven, he was only 10, and couldn't properly appreciate it for what it was. Now that he's older, he's finding a lot to like about it. Especially the first of Lavellan clan. Do it, coward, Fenarel says as Yariel's silence extends. Yariel shoves at him, laughing.
Shut up.
He's cute, and he keeps looking back at you. Just do it. The Arlithven only happens once a decade. That much at least was true. Well, mostly. Very technically, the Arlithven happens every 5 years, but only keepers and some harens attend the smaller ones in between the big ones, which come once every 10 years. And he supposes it's also true that Lavellan clan's first. Lennon, Yariel wants to say, but he isn't sure. Keeps looking back his way. He can't quite read the expression on his face from the distance. He hopes it's longing and not suspicion. And he's been working at the healing tent all day, so you know he wants to cut loose, Fenrir adds. Also true. Firsts and seconds usually get relegated to healing tents, a staple and a necessity at any Arlethen. It wasn't a real party until someone got kicked by a Hala or stabbed in a drunken duel or thrown off an Aravel after all. But it couldn't be fun being stuck healing all day while everyone else was at a story circle or feasting or dancing. Maybe Ariel would talk to him. You know, eventually. Lannon is very pretty. Kind of intimidating too, though less because he's pretty and more because he's a mage. But surely Ariel could forgive him that much for at least a night. Or maybe 2 or 3, depending on how things went. Do it, 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 Fenrir begins chanting, only stopping when Yariel yelled over him.
Creators, fine. Has anyone ever told you how annoying you are?
So ungrateful. Make sure to thank me later to make up for your bad attitude. Yariel socks him in the shoulder. Fenrir smacks him upside the head. Since Ren died, Fenrir is the closest thing Yariel has to a big brother, and it shows. Yariel hops over the fence he'd been leaning on, shoves his hands in his pockets, and goes to talk to Lannon. He only gets prettier as Yariel gets closer. Very pale, with white blonde hair tied into a messy braid, clear blue eyes, and a Valasleen honoring Mythal. The trunk of her tree goes down his nose, the roots spread out at his chin, and the branches sweep across his forehead. He isn't dressed especially well, though if Yariel was going to spend his day around a bunch of bleeding, puking, drunk elves, he wouldn't wear his best either. He seems to realize Yariel is approaching just as he starts casting healing magic on a young girl with a bloodied knee. "Oh," he says, sounding surprised, delighted, and panicked all at the same time. "Hi."
Hey,
Yariel answers.
you're the first of the Lavellen clan, right?
"Yeah, I mean, yes. Lennon, that's me. You're..."
Yariel. Spray clan.
"I saw you watching," Lennon says, then hurries to add, "I didn't mind. I mean, I was watching too. Watching you, watching me. It was mutual watching." He is rapidly devolving into babbling. "You're healing my boot," the girl says. "Sorry," Lannon answers, judging by the angle of his head, directly to the boot. Yariel leans his hip against the nearby table, covered with various balms and salves and bandages.
So your keeper's got you on healing tent duty, huh?
"Yeah."
That sucks.
"Yeah," Lannon sighs. "She wants me trained up as a spirit healer, so I'm pretty much stuck here the whole time."
The whole time?
Lannon finishes healing the girl's knee. She hops off the stool she'd been perched on and flexes her leg experimentally, as Lannon looks up at Sabre from where he is still crouched on the ground.
Seems to be plenty of other firsts and seconds around to heal. That's all I'm saying.
Yariel says, glancing around the tent, and in fairness, that was true.
I'm sure no one would even notice if you slipped out.
Lannon is staring at him like a person who has never dared to break a keeper's command before, but is excited by the mere possibility of it. He stands, chews his lip nervously, wipes his hands off on the towel tucked into his belt. "I don't know," he hedges. "Keeper Deshana's kind of a hard-ass. If she found out I ditched..."
So don't let her find out.
Yariel insists, looming forward and over him.
You like dancing?
He does, as it turns out, like dancing. Or at the very least, he likes dancing with Yariel, because they stay for several hours at the drum circle, stopping only intermittently, and only long enough to drink sweet fruit wine brewed by one of the clan masters. Yariel feels like he could watch Lennon twist and dance for hours around the drum circle fire, and he does. Yariel is no longer confused why damn near a quarter of the women in Sabre clan came back pregnant after the last Arlethen. The atmosphere lends itself to sex and romance, more so as the sun gets lower. The rumble of constant voices dies down to muttering. The bonfires burn low, the Hala low in their pens, and the stars come out. They dance until the drummers stop and find a nearby hill with dew-soaked grass. It saturates the back of Yariel's shirt, but he doesn't mind. In fact, it feels amazing, nearly sizzling on his heated skin. This far south and this late, the constellations are mostly swallowed up by the pulsing blue and green aurora, the first thing their eyes find when they collapse side by side. Creators, Lannon laughs, breathless. Every part of me hurts.
Well, you did do a lot of dancing.
Don't sound so admonishing. As I recall, you were quite enjoying the show. Yariel grins, of course, but doesn't dare deny it.
I'm glad you slipped away.
He asks. So glad, Lannon answers. I don't normally do this kind of thing. The keeper keeps me on a tight leash most of the time.
The Arlethen only happens once a decade.
Yariel says, and he will die before admitting to Fenriril that he's using his line.
Everyone deserves the opportunity to cut loose here.
Lannon giggles drunkenly. It's a nice but dizzy sound. Yariel grins at him, though with only the starlight and the distant torches of the Arlethen to light it, he doubts Lannon can see it.
So where does Lavellen clan roam?
He asks. The free marches, mostly, Lannon answers, yawning and stretching. Yariel can just barely make out the dark silhouette of the mage as his back arches off the grass, which is good because he likes the sight of it a lot. Skirting along the border between Kirkwall, Starkhaven, and Tantervale.
That's pretty far north.
Yariel says.
You're not worried about slavers?
They mostly stick to Navara and Ravane. That's what the keeper says, anyhow. And most of the Shems avoid the borderlands so they don't start a political conflict. He pauses. What about Sabray clan? Where do you roam?
Ferelden, up until a few years ago. We went west after...
Yariel's words falter halfway up his throat, because the rest of the sentence is, of course, after Ren died. Nothing had been the same since Ren died. He had been such a huge presence in the clan, everyone's friend, the best storyteller, the up-and-coming hunter. Even 6 years later, Sabray clan feels bereft. It's why they'd left Ferelden, and why the story circles were so much more subdued. After... Lannon prompts, when Yariel's sentence stretches too long. Yariel's eyes snap back into focus, and he does what he always does to avoid uncomfortable topics. He lies preposterously.
After that high dragon swooped down and ate our last keeper.
He says, mildly. Lannon laughs loudly. Yariel really likes his laugh. Liar, he says.
Creators, strike me down if I'm lying.
Yariel answers, all earnestness.
Ate her right up in one big bite.
And I suppose you single-handedly felled it to avenge her, did you?
Well, of course.
Yariel says, sitting upright and leaning back on his palms so he can grin wolfishly down at Lannon.
I had to defend the clan.
Lannon sits up too, and even in the darkness, Yariel can see his blue eyes glimmer mischievously. Oh, I see, he returns. Had I known I'd been dancing with a mighty dragon slayer all this time, I might have accorded certain favors. The energy of the conversation has changed a bit, Yariel can tell. It's still light-hearted, but he can feel the sudden undercurrent of tension. The night is dark, the grass is soft, and Lannon is pretty. Yariel would have to be an idiot not to take advantage.
Oh? Such as?
And then Lannon is straddling Yariel's lap. Certainly not the worst thing that had ever been there. He smells like cooling sweat and sweet wine. Yariel's hands settle at once on Lannon's hips. Why don't we go back to my tent and I'll show you? Yariel grins. Gone is the shy, stuttering first from a few hours ago. What a difference some dancing and wine makes. They make it back to the tent in record time. Yariel learns a lot that night. He learns that the lingering suspicion he'd had for the past few years that he is bisexual is definitely true. He learns that a man brings a different, but still wholly agreeable, presence to a shared tent. He learns that Lannon is a clumsy sweet kisser, but a very enthusiastic bed partner. The whole evening is going very well, all things considered. Until the end of the night, when Yariel learns one more thing. That Fenriril had actually been right about bedding mages. Except in this specific case, rather than spraying frost, when they collapse beside each other panting on the bedroll, the entire top half of the tent is on fire. The very last thing Yariel learns that night, after an hour of frantically putting the fire out and stopping it from spreading to other tents, is that he is never, ever, ever going to sleep with a mage ever again. Hey friends, Tessa here. If you're desperate to hear the next episode, chances are good that you can by joining our Discord server. We post links to all episodes in pre-release, and you can even chat with us and listen live as we record. Join us by going to bit.ly/cfcdiscord. For more information on the show, character biographies, and links to social media, head to our website, critfail.club or critfailclub.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. Crit Fail Club does not advertise at all, so if you like what you hear, tell a friend who might also like it, make a post on social media about it, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Full episodes are available on our YouTube channel, bit.ly/cfcchannel, or wherever you get your podcasts.